Good afternoon and happy Friday, TGI Friday to everyone out there, and welcome to Tea with Ann Marie, where I am spilling the tea on all things business, politics, community news, and happenings, and more. I hope you all had a wonderful week so far. I'm not sure where exactly the week went, but we're here and it's Friday, and I'm actually happy about the weekend. But at any rate, I want to welcome a special guest today. Dr. Stephanie Hayden, who is the director, CEO, founder of the Learning NoMad LLC. Welcome, Dr. Hayden.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me onto your show.
And no problem.
Yes.
No, no problem at all. And forgive me, it's Dr. Stephanie Hayden-Adeyemo.
Adeyemo, yes.
Adeyemo, okay. So welcome to Tea with Ann Marie. Super excited to have you here to learn more about the great work that you're doing, to talk about the state of education and equity, and whatever else is happening that we're going to touch on in the world today.
Yes, and I'm excited to be here also.
Awesome. Well, what I like to do with the guests that I have on the show is to, in your words, tell me about your background, where you're from, how you get started in education and the work that you're doing, and just give myself and our audience a little bit more about you.
All right. Thank you so much again for inviting me onto your show today. First of all, I want to start off by saying a big shout out and salute to HBCUs, because without an HBCU, I think I still would have made it, but Howard just made it a little bit special. Go Bison. All right. I'm repping the School of Arts and Science, and I think that's where I would start off first. I immigrated here in the early 80s from a product of two beautiful parents. One is now deceased, my mom. But I know that in this time and moment, she would be very proud of me being on your show and spilling the tea and, showing that her and my dad, they really were very prominent about making education first because it provided opportunities. So we immigrated here in the 80s from the lovely island of Jamaica to South Florida. Then, in every family dynamics with change, new country, just certain life events, my parents divorced, and therefore I was thrust with my dad. And so my dad continued education. And then I went to schools both in South Florida. My primary years were, of course, in Jamaica. Then I continued in South Florida, and then I eventually moved to the state of Virginia. And then I end up in DC at Howard University at the age of 14. So
Wait, you ended up where at 14?
Howard University.
At 14?
Yes. So remember, I started out by saying that I owe it to an HBCU, but my island that I'm from, originally Jamaica, I just happened to start reading at around 2 years old because I was naturally inquisitive. I wanted to know everything. And so I was a early head starter in the journey of socialized education and learning. And so in the island of Jamaica, because the way it's set up, you don't necessarily need to be socially trained to go to school. You just had to be able to go use the bathroom, and if you couldn't, then someone will assist you. But as long as you could do reading, writing, arithmetic, and you're able to follow. And so that's what I did as a natural follower and a leader. And that's how I ended up at Howard at 14.
Wow. Well, okay. Well, I'm going to let you continue on, but I really just had to pause there because I had to make sure that I was hearing you correctly, that you were at Howard University. And yes, definitely shout out to HBCUs. I got to shout out my HBCU, the greatest, Florida A&M University.
Listen, we're all family. And we're producing great minds. And we've always been producing great minds. And so I would say, prominently when in Virginia at that time in the early 90s, they started IB education in semi-dual enrollment. So I did start out my journey at Hampton University my senior year, where I went there as a product of TRIO programs. So I was able to be influenced and also thrived in that type of environment. And so that's why it was natural for me, the next step, to go to Howard University. And in that part, I was there again, being in that community and just having that opportunity to be around others that may look like me. But again, I think the thing with a lot of people that others are realizing is that we all are from different walks of life. We may appear phenotypically to look the same, and that leads me into, why did I go to Howard? I went to Howard because at the time I had a fascination for the love of sciences, particularly life sciences. So originally I started out, I wanted to be an MD PhD student, which is a medical scientist. So in part, I did attend Howard. I did major in biology and chemistry in the School of Arts and Science. And in my tenure there, I was able to be a part of many different scholarship opportunities and organizations, such as the Thomas B. Biological Society, which I was the president, Ronald E. McNair Scholar, which eventually allowed me to see the passion for research in obtaining my PhD. And so, with that being said, the journey with a learner is that you always have to find the niche that you're best at. And it's not necessarily that you're best at, is where can you get the most opportunity growth to push forward. And I believe the sciences and being an educator allowed me to do that. Not necessarily not being a medical researcher, but I saw that if it's only me alone in a lab, it's only me and my mind. But if I can inspire other students that look like me that we don't see in laboratories, then I thought that, to me, it projected the best outlay growth to push that forward. And so that's how I found myself in education rather than medical research.
Wow. Well, kudos to you, and thanks for everyone who is tuning in. And definitely got to give a special shout out to the beautiful island of Jamaica, which myself and family are from as well. So, and something about, Jamaican parents really pushing you, man. But so, let's talk about the learning nomad, which very interesting name, because nomads kind of wander the earth, or people who just like to kind of go about freely and learn different things and experience different things. In my mind, I'm a nomad. I have this thing where I'm like, man, if I could just take a year or two to just travel the world and work in any part of the world. That's like one of my goals within the next couple of years or so. But let's talk about the learning nomad and what is the learning nomad? How did you come up with that? And what exactly is it that you all do?
So, you actually phrased it and term it just like how I wanted everyone to see it. Because in education, you learn that the nomad goes, from place to place. It doesn't have a real home, right? And so I look at education, and we look at education at the learning nomad as the following, right? When you learn, it's not stagnant, right? It's a place to go to different levels, gather what you can, and then move on, share, and impart. It's never, this is my home base. And so my journey through education and learning has been that, like I stated, I started out in medicine, but I eventually moved on to education. And even in doing education, I've been a grant reviewer, I've done procurement, I've done grant management, I've been a camp director. Again, everything fueling back to the core value of learning. How am I going to impart some type of experience to someone to move them forward? So at the Learning Nomad, our mission basically is, as you stated, we want to make sure that learners understand. We don't want to just call them students. We want to call them learners, because eventually you just continue, like the nomad, right? We want them to experience that learning is not stagnant, and no one can tell you what you can learn and your abilities. You have to flex that muscle and expand the brain, as we know that all lobes of our brain, they work together in sync, right? And so we don't want anyone to think that they're limited to what someone stated in a research document. that this is your ability. And so that's what we try to create at the Learning Nomad, right? We create a sense of support through remote learning instruction. We support through tutoring. We also support through grant writing. We also support through grant review. We also support through building learning platforms that actively engage students and not just let them sit in front of the screen and tap. And so that's basically what we do. We support everyone that's in the path and the walking of learning.
That is pretty awesome. And when you say everyone, what levels of education is this? Like K through 12,
K
or
through
is it post secondary?
K through 16. So a little bit of Head Start, like I said, like what are the key things that I find that how I was successful. And I don't want to use, I'm going to take that word back, successful, because we have in our culture of learning and educators and just administration and just higher education, we have a terminology that we use. Okay, if someone is successful, they're making money, right? And so success in learning is not necessarily you got an A on the paper. And so it's that mind frame shift of that. If I can expand someone's mind to think beyond what is on the written paper, I think that is what I term as moving the needle forward. So the everyone, again, would be the materials that are put before students, those that go into investing in learners, right? And those that write the policies that may get the funding in certain states to allow that, not the regular type of learning, like in a classroom, because we noticed that the pandemic, even though everyone was like, we're going to be remote, see, we're on StreamYard, we're going to do it. But we quickly saw that there is a breakdown between what is being taught, what's being put before students, what is being used as the mode to transfer the education. Do we even have an ability to upscale the one teacher to reach everyone, right? We've done that for higher education, right? Online learning, remote learning, they started that back in like the early 90s, right? I remember Walden University coming to Howard University asking us, hey, Ronald McNair scholars at the time, would you like to be a part of this university? And at that time, we didn't. But luckily, later on in life, I circled back and I actually attended that school, And so what I'm saying is that education and success and what we use as the mode to drive learners is not always going to be what we think it's going to be, because the pandemic really opened a lot of people's eyes. And I think there are still eyes closed because everyone is thinking a computer is the way to do it. Opening up the broadband to get Wi-Fi to everyone is going to do it. But you still have people that are literally still stuck in the crack that they overlooked.
Wow. So, and that brings us to the point of the core of the discussion today. And I actually just we just wrapped up the National Black Economic Conference in August. And one of the topics was the miseducation of economics and the role that that economics play in the education space. And so today, we're going to be talking about the state of education and equity. And right now, in every corner of the world, well, not the world, but of course the USA for sure, but every corner of the country, and in every industry for the most part, the word equity is definitely being tossed around a lot, especially over the last probably 5 years or so. I think the word equity has definitely become the trend. And so first, before we dive into the state of education, I would like for you to break down equity in your words and your thoughts, and what that means as it relates to education.
Yeah, I would start first by saying, in my humble opinion, I'm taking the words of Dr. Chu from UCF. I worked with him when I worked with another county, and they were training again using STEM to reach students, right? I would say, in my humble opinion, because I've been in spaces where they're talking about equity, and I'm not seeing in the room, right? So in South Florida, when I arrived here, I was a wide-eyed, young, naive, young person because I just got here, right? So I'm coming from my homeland, and everyone in my class is different. But the way that the British system is set up, right? So in Jamaica, we have what we call classes, right? So we have a 4A, a 4B, a 4C, a 4D, and that is how they group the students at that time, right? So if you're in the 4A, you're supposed to be the most like on point student, right? So you can add really well, you can subtract really well, you can write really well. But then when you go to the D, like the 1D, you can see the difference in the abilities of the kids. And even that, at that point when I was young, I felt like that's not right because you're separating people based on ability. And if I am at morning devotion, so we have morning devotion, and they only send out at the time, maybe it's different now, they only send out those students that are in the A class, right? I can see already being 4 years old that there's a difference if I cannot add or subtract. So imagine if I am in classrooms where I'm never going to be given anything because they don't think I'm ever going to make it. So why even bother? Only deal with those students that are always going to make it according to the data, right? And so that's how I see equity, right? I see equity through the eyes of me when I was growing up, right? Now imagine what it looks like now. That
Right.
was that was 78, 85, right?
Yeah.
Just 5 years ago, you stated that they just started talking about equity. But everyone can see that equity is based on your personal experience and how you're viewing it. There is a picture that I see that's going around that I see a lot in a lot of trainings as it relates to education. And it's a fence. It's a
Mhm.
fence with like three people on a box, and they're looking at like a game or something, like a diamond, a baseball diamond, and there's a group of people. When I look at that picture, I get annoyed by the picture because there are people that don't have the box to stand on. That's the whole
Mm.
point.
Yeah.
There's no box to stand on. I'm not even at the gate. I'm not even let in the gate to stand on the box. So that's the type of learners I am looking at. They're not even given the box. They're told to go find the box or find something to make the box so you
Hmm.
can even get into the gate, right? And then
Right.
there was a famous speech at Harvard, the valedictorian at the time. And he said, well, you know what? We're here, we're out here, we're trying to make it, make it, make it. And then you say education is the key, but you change the locks. You change the locks all the time. So that's where my opinion comes in, my humble opinion, when I look at equity, because this is going to be your word for today. But last year, a couple years, it was SEL. And then before that, you're going to come up with another one. Let's talk about what we really need to talk about. Let's talk about that you don't value that I can learn.
Right.
That's number one.
Yeah. Well, wow, you just said a whole
I'm
mouthful.
sorry,
Um,
but you
no, no,
asked
no,
me and
no.
I,
But that's the purpose of this discussion. And so you're right, because I do see that picture float around a lot. And one of our viewers mentioned equity versus equality, and I think oftentimes that gets very confused. What's your thoughts on? Because remember, it was equality that we've been fighting for forever. Whether it's you know. Blacks fighting for equality, women fighting for equality. Now, BIPOC communities, that's the new term for those who don't know what BIPOC means, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities fighting for equality, LGBTQ community fighting for equality. And then now we're talking about, we've shifted from equality to, like I said, the last 5 years or so, equity. So what are your thoughts on one versus the other?
So, Ms. Sorrell, I just have a very distinct question to ask you. If I don't have a hold on equity, equality,
Mm-hmm.
how can I move to
Equity?
I'm telling you, my background is science and math and rationality. If
Yeah.
I'm not if I'm not a good driver, you shouldn't give me the key. And you shouldn't make me a stunt driver if I haven't mastered moving the car forward.
Well, there are those in our society that still today don't believe in equality for all. So let's be clear on that. There are those in our society that do not believe that there should be equality for all. Secondly, when we talk about equity and giving everyone, as one of our viewers says here, all learners, but whether it's in the learning environment or other environments, the tools they need to soar. There are people who don't believe that everyone should be given all the tools to soar either. So I think on both fronts, we still have a ton of work to do when we're talking about equality, but it seems that we've just kind of moved on from that and pushed it to the side. It's like, oh, we're all created equal. What you talking about equality? We're all equal. And then moved on to the new shiny, especially since last year, where the entire country is now woke, or at least was woke for that moment in time last year, and became the big push for equity, has now come to light. I mean, now diversity, equity, inclusion is the buzz. It's all the buzz right now. So no, there's still a lot of work.
You know what was one of my second best subject in school was history.
Mm-hmm.
And I grapple a lot with this because I remember studying Plessy versus Ferguson and looking at how that was the norm, that they made a law. And so it for me, my understanding is that you made a law to separate people, and it was okay to separate people, right? As long as they're separate. But in separate, you didn't give me everything that I needed, the tools. I had outdated items
Right.
but you told me I could learn, but I'm going to separate you, right? It's the same thing with the genders and the bathrooms and the it's the same. It's the ideology that in order for people to thrive, they have to be separate. And
Right.
if they're separated, then they can never come together to put like two and two together and be like, they're separating us for a reason. And so the deeper conversation is, why are the society or the people that be try to separate us and confuse us? Why don't we just sit together at the table and try to figure out what is it that we need for our society in the next 30 years to have? Because it takes a long time to unlearn a habit. And it also, as you know, it takes a long time to change laws because it's different people coming in and they're from their point of view, what they think it should look like. Going back again to our experiences. It is our experiences that move people to change what they want to change. If you don't experience something, you think of it as third hand. That didn't happen to me. I don't think it's important, even though they're saying something. I don't think it's important. It's the same concept. If people that are educators right now, which they are, some, if they say that we don't want to be in this state of unjust, we don't want to be in this state of not having equal means to reach our learners, then I want to stand up and do that. I want to be the change I want to see. But again, there are people that I'm telling you, they're afraid to do that because others have done it before and they're silenced, or they go and change to the next topic and everyone thinks everything is fine. It's not fine because I can see a problem before a problem happens, because no one's making a change. Everyone is just switching to something else and
Right.
thinking that that's going to be easier to do than this. If we sit down and do the hard work, like the literal hard work, the other things that come up go under the hard work, but you got to do the hard work. You can't just change it to another synonym and think it's going to get done. It's not. And that is the hard facts. People like to change things when it gets difficult rather than handling the issue at hand. And that's where we're at. If we sit, since we had this 18 months to pause, if we sit and really think about what do we want to see learning for me, someone else that doesn't look like me, then we actually would sit down rather than coming up with these weird things to pass over. And then we're back again having the same conversation about equity versus equality.
Well,
and that's where I'm at.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of the things that are that stand out. And you're in the education space. I'm sure you would definitely know a lot more of them than me. But from just some of the overarching items, I know we talked about technology and access to computers, but even before the computer, access to Wi-Fi and broadband. Then you talk about how schools and school districts, well, first, how school districts are funded and the resources they're provided with. And then within that district, how certain schools in certain zip codes and communities are funded and the resources they're provided with. The types of programming, whether it's the arts, the sciences, career paths, and different things like that, how those are orchestrated at various schools. And then curriculum, when we talk about curriculum and learning. And then, of course, let's not even get into testing. So I just know that those are some high level things that I'm aware of. When we talk about the state of education equity, and I just went through a whole list of it, but, share some of what's happening and what are the solutions, or at least what are the solutions that can happen to create a more equitable environment in those various areas. And of course, other areas that you come in contact with every day.
So there's one that that wasn't in there, and I know it gets a lot of, I don't think it gets a lot of shine, and that's just basic food, right?
Oh, food.
I was sitting down one day, and because I was picking up a box from my son's school, right? So a lot of people found themselves in a pantry line, food is not fresh, desert, etc. And I sat down and I was like, wow, I remember how long it took for breakfast to be free. Wow. Now lunch is free now. And I'm like, a whole pandemic made people sit down and say, you know what? Lunch should be free.
Well, pausing on that, the whole pandemic allowed the world to see that children in America go home hungry every day or come to school hungry every day. And that's sometimes their only meal. I mean, given the work that I do in the community, I mean, I'm aware of it, but I think when the national media has now plastered it across television screens for the world to see, it showed the disparity. It showed the despair in itself of families really struggling to make ends meet.
Ask an educator before a pencil, before a test, before a laptop comes on, before, you have kids that are tired, not proper nutrition. I cannot go into the line because the person is going to put me on blast because I owe a fee, which we've seen that. We've seen that on national news. We've seen where people are paying students' bills because the kindness of their heart, we see that. And again, just basic things, basic things. You have to fill out papers to qualify, right? And then if you don't qualify, that's how schools are termed Title Ones, right?
Mm.
That means everyone has to fill out the paper. And then you determine how money is going to come to your school, right? Free and reduce, right? You literally took away reduce and made everyone on the same level because everyone needs food. Everyone needs food. Everyone's paying taxes. Why can't all children eat? Help them get the foundation to come into school, sit down, not to be worrying about where my meal is coming from, not to be feeling hungry and I can't learn. Because trust me, you've been in opportunities where you're hungry and you cannot concentrate. And I know someone says, well, Dr. Hayden, you're so, idealistic. Food is the end all. Yeah. Yeah. For some people rob so they can eat.
Yeah.
Some people sell their bodies so they can eat. This is not anything new.
Yeah.
It's not anything new. And so when you talk about what is a solution set, what is it? I think people need to stop looking at, or I wouldn't say people need to stop. An action word would be, in your worst predicament, think that you could be that person where you have to stand in the line and get food because you need to eat. Think about that. I would rather eat than to stay in a home that I can't afford. How am I going to eat? And so people think about, when we go to the school lunches and they were complaining that they were changing lunches to make them healthy, right? Then when we change the lunch to make it healthy, we saw obesity go down. Then we create things to increase obesity back. We created video games and these things that keep kids engaged. And then we're back on the cycle again. We have Takis, food that come out that is not healthy, but it's sold. Then we come out and people produce the news. It's causing ulcers in young children because that's all they're eating. It's just where I don't understand, where the people that are supposed to be the most knowledgeable create the most chaos in society rather than the simplistic thing. Make it better for everyone. Don't just make it better for your type of people, because your type of people will be the people that we have to deal with 50 years from now. So if you come up with a solution, like I said, doing the work, with society so we can get the greater good, which is that each human on earth is deserving of the very best that we can offer as a society, rather than giving the bare, meager means of having someone apply for a piece of paper to say that they can eat. Their
Well,
children can eat.
well, don't we learn in, well, at least I know in business school, you learn about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really talking about the basic human needs. And it goes into those hierarchy. And I believe that on one of the primary ones, food, food and water. Then we talk about shelter, then, and it goes up from there. And so it's always amazing to me, whether it's in the education system or just in, the fact that we have people in the world who don't have the basic hierarchy of needs, being food, water, clean, healthy water, nutritious food being one of them. We have land out the yin yang to grow food. So no, I get exactly what you're saying. And that is, like you said, I mean, a hungry child can't learn or don't
No.
have the energy to learn or the focus. I mean, come on, as hungry adults, when we're waiting around for lunchtime, we can't even focus.
They changed the term. What is it? Angry or something like that. Hangry,
yeah.
together. And I know, like I stated, people think that, we have these great thinkers in the world and we think so small because they're like, oh, you just need to grow a farm and they need to eat. No, it's true. Your body needs nutrition. The brain only grows with what you put it. That's why they give young women and mothers, they give them nutritious items like WIC. WIC is a godsend, because if somebody didn't think that a woman in producing a child needs to just eat and eat well, then we wouldn't have that program. Again, it's just someone sitting down and saying, hey, basic needs. Let's concentrate on basic needs for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone needs to eat. Everyone needs proper clothing. Everyone needs shelter. Everyone needs access to healthcare. Everyone just like you said, Maslow, what are the basic things we need? Bill laws, bill bill laws, bill legislation around that, bill policies around basic needs of people. It is not that difficult to understand that as a human, there are just things that will make someone's life better. If I don't have to struggle to figure out where I'm going to live, provide me an area where I can live. If I don't have to drive or get on a bus to go to the nearest school, which is 10 miles away, create a school that's right in my next door where I could just walk. And then I don't have to build up all this traffic on the street. I don't have to be in a car getting my lungs contaminated by gasoline. You know, it's just simple. I'm telling you, Miss
Yeah.
Ann, life is really simple, ma'am. It
Well,
really is.
it is, but I think what ends up happening too, and I want your opinion on this, because I think what oftentimes happens when we have these conversations around equity, or when we have these conversations around equality, it often appears that, you know, the powers to be are not as concerned because the perception is that it's a Black person problem or it's a brown person problem, when the reality is it's a socioeconomic problem, it's a poor person problem. It's a person who doesn't have the right means or resources problem. It doesn't happen to be just about color or ethnicity. It really is about the bottom line of people's socioeconomic, meaning their income primarily, that is causing these types of challenges. And so until everyone from all walks of life recognize that this is not a color problem, this is an economic problem, then it's going to continue. We're going to continue to go in circles. We're going to continue to 50, 60, 100 years later, still try to solve the equality and equity issue, but particularly the equity issue with everyone not having the tools and resources that they need, because it really is, it comes down to economics.
I remember. I remember bringing up, circling back to the why of the conversation, assessing the state of education and equity. I remember I was in one of my positions. My goal was to integrate a school using a grant.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am. Integrate. No, I'm being serious.
Like
Integrate schools.
How?
The schools are segregated.
How are they segregated? Tell me how they're segregated.
Okay. All one race according to the Department of Ed. 99% anyone from the African diaspora. So you could be Jamaican, Haitian, American, born here, Afro-Latina. If it's one group of people that only attend that school, they wanted the school to be integrated. And so the way they integrated that is that you have a lottery system or an enrollment where students applied there as a STEM or a magnet, right? So magnet sometimes can be used as a way to segregate people.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Right. So they created a grant to integrate schools that way, because it went the opposite direction of the way they wanted. And so a lot of the schools, you know, it's one race is at the school, and it's purposely done that way. And so what happens is, what you did not intend to happen, it happened. And so now you're trying to integrate schools. So you're putting more of one race of people into a school to balance out the school. But then you go back to the same situation. Why not open the school and let it be a community school? Why are you segregating the school as such? Because what we
Right.
found, yes, go ahead.
Well, no, I was gonna say, right. I don't think the intent, well, especially on a K through 12 level, where again it should be community schooling, which we know that has some issues because people are being bused all over the place. And then when you add private schools, charter schools, vouchers, all types of things like that, that's a whole nother conversation that we'll have to have another show. But no, to your point, my immediate thought is, at the end of the day, I don't care who goes to the school. The basic resources, food, funding, good curriculum, opportunities for learning, opportunities for progressing, scholarships, making sure that students are not being in a cookie cut learning environment, because all students don't learn the same way, but they still deserve the same opportunity. I think that's what the focus should be, whether it's 99% students are of the African diaspora, and 99% students are Latinx, or 99% students are white. Mm-hmm. Even that school versus the school down the street should have the same exact resources.
But what you find is schools that have populations that look like you or me, they have to apply for things. And so
which is ridiculous.
Other schools don't. Correct. And others, again, remember what you said just now, all schools should have the same opportunity. But why does this school have to apply? Because you make the entire school that way, because you brought everyone that is of that same socioeconomic background at the one school. So they always have to apply for something, and they may not be able to get it because we have students that are not passing the state tests. And so now your data doesn't match up to the you sort of and so that's
I've always been against that whole state test grading the schools based on this. Right. I've been against that forever.
So a lot of schools are in that predicament where you have community schools are not getting funded because it's difficult for that school to get everything they need, because it's so much applications they have to apply, and you're not going to get all the funding. And so there you have an underfunded school, right? Resources are already limited. People are strapped already. They don't have the support that they need. And then you see the news stating, well, see, we told you. We told you they can't handle it. No, it's because there's a disproportionate amount of money that's given to schools of certain type. Why does a school have to always apply for aid? And again, we circle back up to HBCUs. I went to Howard University. Howard University is only funded by the federal government, right? So we're literally we're on welfare. We're on welfare. Going back to that old terminology, welfare, right? So it's welfare to work for us. And if they choose to give us money, they choose to give us money. And if they don't, oh well. And so you have a majority of some of the students that go to some HBCU, their EFC is 0. That means their parents cannot contribute anything. So at the time when they're giving out Pell Grant, it's not enough. So you have that student doing work study. They're trying to keep up with the load. It takes a long time for them to matriculate. Now they're in debt. So it's the same process of who do we choose to give money to? Who do we think can succeed and who we don't? And it goes back again to, like I said, it's the person's experience that's giving the money. If I don't give value and weight to that person, I'm always going to make them apply for an application to get something. And I'm always going to give you what I want to give you. And so that's where I'm at. And that's where we're at the Learning Nomad. We want to make sure that if you're applying for a grant, et cetera, we want to make sure you have all the knowledge you need to make sure your application is sure up. So you don't always go out begging for things. And I feel that that's not fair. And that's the state of education. Schools should not beg for things. They should be given the things they need. Circling back to Maslow, a school needs everything it needs to make their learners successful, also their employees successful, so they know that they're not somewhere just beating at the air. And so that's how I see a lot of educators. They have lost hope. They have lost the tenacity to learn, to teach others. They feel downtrodden, because I don't want people to think that all I care about are learners. I care about the people that are in front of our learners. And
Right.
when they don't feel seen and supported, everyone loses. Everyone loses.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, because we're going to have to wrap up soon, but what are your, how do you propose if anyone wants to get involved with the Learning NoMad, that they reach out to you, and how can those of us in the community do a better job to support equity in schools, in our school systems?
I would tell someone, first of all, before we go on the outside to come together, look inside. What are you doing inside the home that can strengthen that home, so that when the child goes to school, the needs are not so great? And people are like, well, I don't have to listen. Sitting down, communicating first person in a conversation allows students to learn debate and constructive conversation. The I, the we, the they, right? Sitting down when you go in the grocery store, okay, we have $10. How are we going to budget this, right? How are we going to spend this money? Look at the cents, look at the taxes, simple things like that. I remember the key things that I can remember that helped me to propel myself from 3 to where I am now, is that incorporating the child in the everyday of how our household is run. Because math, English, writing, all those things you can build. And then when the child gets to school, and you may have like an hour or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, we're all remote now. Get involved in the SACs. I wouldn't even, I know somebody would say to me, don't PTA, but get involved inside the SACs. If you cannot attend a parent meeting, if you virtually can attend a SAC, be there, because you have to represent that school, because they only will hear from the makeup of the school. So if you have all fifth graders showing up, parents that are only of one race, no, you need to have a balanced group of people being there, speaking the voice for the school. So if I can give a parent one advice, join or be a part of your SAC. You don't have to go there every day, but at every meeting that they have, but at least be there. If it's a Title I school, be there for the Title I meeting. Be there to give your input of what you want to see at that school. If you're a part of the SAC, be there for at least the meeting. Be a member. Just attend. Just put it on your calendar, because they will send you that virtual link. Whatever county you're in inside the state of Florida, look up the SAC for that school. And if they don't have a body that's giving advice to how money should be used at the school, then get that body started. That would be my one advice, an action item to do today.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Stephanie Hayden-Adeyemo, thank you so much for joining me and for
Thank you so
spreading
much
this
for
knowledge.
giving me the opportunity.
No, you're welcome. You're very passionate about the work you do. I see that. And I know that you're going to continue impacting and changing lives in our education system. And whatever I can do to support that, of course, having you here on the show to really share that information, I think it really sheds light on our system. A lot of people don't know. People go about their daily lives, and if they don't see how things like this impact them directly or impact their children or their neighbors' children directly, then, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, didn't know that exists. And it's kind of like a keep it moving on to business as usual. So we want to make sure that we spill the tea here on Tea with Ann Marie, so that we don't just do business as usual, that we're all here to make an impact and empower the lives. Now, before you go, I do have to ask, what's your favorite tea that you drink?
It's a good thing you asked, because I'm not a coffee drinker. There's Ribos in South Africa. That's really good. And then also Cersei, because I'm Jamaican. It's a good washout, as we would say. Those are my tea, Ribos and Cersei.
Okay, I love it. And now, is Ribos as bitter as Cersei?
No, it's like a sweet rosy tea.
Okay. Because Cersei, woo, that
There
thing
is
is good.
nothing that there's nothing that could compare to Cersei.
Well, I'm having some chamomile tea here today to keep me
Okay,
calm
and
on
that will
this
keep you
Friday.
calm. Yes.
To keep me calm on this Friday. So everyone, of course, as always, share this video. Make sure that you follow Dr. Stephanie Hayden on LinkedIn, as well as make sure you check out AnnMarieSorrell.com and pick up your copy of No Story Without a Glory. You will get an autographed copy if you go to the website and purchase. And of course, while you're there, look around at my other products, Chronicles of a Serial Dater, as well as the Serial Dater line of t-shirts. And make sure you check out cannabiziac.com, where we are bringing you the latest, greatest resources, information, and education for those who want to tap into what is estimated to be the $90+ billion global industry. You don't want to get left behind. Tap in and learn today at cannabiziac.com and attend our upcoming Hemp Happy Hour and Cannabiziac University web series. Also, make sure you check out the Mosaic Group.co for all of your marketing, advertising, public relations, and community engagement needs. We are here to be your visibility team. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you again, Dr. Stephanie Hayden. And make sure you check out the Learning NoMad, because she's going to get y'all taken care of, and make sure y'all get y'all grants and everything. Parents, that you have the resources and tools that you need for your children. Thank you all. And make sure you join us again for another episode of Tea with Ann Marie. See you soon.